They said she was cured, but when the staff came to release her, her room was empty. The bed was still warm, the restraints still locked, and yet she was gone. The Hartwell State Hospital was infamous for losing things, records, patients, even entire wings to fire and neglect. But what happened on a cold autumn night in 1987 would stain its reputation forever, becoming a chilling legend whispered in the decaying hallways for decades to come. Court documents show that patient number 84, a 26-year-old woman named Clara Hayes, had been officially cleared for discharge. After months of treatment, she was finally going home. The paperwork was signed, her family notified, but she never made it past the asylum's iron gates. In fact, she never even left her room. The official hospital report, filed hastily the next morning, claimed she had escaped. But how? The police investigation turned up nothing. There was no conceivable exit route. The windows were barred, the door was locked from the outside, and there were no signs of a struggle. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. The staff on duty that night swore they saw nothing, heard nothing. The case quickly went cold, another forgotten file in a long line of administrative failures. But as the hospital's dark history would later reveal, Clara Hayes wasn't just forgotten, she was erased. Months after Clara's disappearance, state auditors arrived for a routine inspection. What they found was anything but routine. Entire sections of medical logs from the weeks leading up to her vanishing were missing. Pages were torn from physical ledgers, and digital archives from that specific time period were corrupted beyond recovery. It was a systematic deletion of information, a deliberate cover-up. But in their search through the disorganized archives, a single, overlooked page survived, tucked away in a mislabeled folder. It was a nurse's handwritten note, dated just 2 days before Clara was scheduled to be released. The scrawled entry read, "She keeps asking about the locked floor. Says she hears crying down there." The auditors were baffled. They cross-referenced this note with the hospital's official blueprints, which were meticulously detailed. There was no locked floor listed anywhere in the building's construction plans. No such wing, ward, or level officially existed. The note was dismissed as the rambling of a troubled patient. But that single cryptic sentence was the key to unlocking a secret the asylum had buried for nearly 40 years. Decades passed. The Hartwell State Hospital, crumbling under the weight of its own scandals and neglect, was eventually shut down. The mystery of patient number 84 faded into local folklore. But in the early 2000s, a cold case unit decided to revisit the now abandoned asylum one last time. Armed with new ground-penetrating radar and the old, cryptic nurse's note, they scoured the building's foundation. Behind a sealed maintenance door in the main boiler room, a door that had been plastered over and painted to blend in with the wall, they found it, a hidden stairwell choked with dust and cobwebs descending into darkness. The air grew cold and heavy as they went down, the steps slick with moisture. At the bottom was a long, dark corridor leading to an unregistered basement level. What they discovered there matched old construction records from 1949 for a ward that was supposedly condemned and sealed off before the main hospital even opened. Inside this secret, forgotten wing, they found 13 rusted bed frames, still bolted to the concrete floor. Medical equipment from a bygone era lay scattered about, covered in a thick layer of grime. And there, on one of the bed frames at the far end of the ward, lay a small plastic patient wristband. It was brittle with age, but the name tag was still legible. It read, "C. Hayes. Clara hadn't escaped. She had been taken." The discovery prompted investigators to track down any surviving staff from that era. Most were gone, but they located one former orderly, now a man in his late 80s, living in a nursing home nearby. At first, he was reluctant to speak, his eyes filled with the fear that had lingered for decades. But presented with the evidence of the hidden ward, his composure broke. In a halting, recorded confession, he admitted what really happened at Hartwell. He said certain patients, those deemed difficult or those without family to ask questions, were sometimes taken below ground. He described it as a place for private treatment sessions, away from the prying eyes of regulators and official records. When the detectives pressed him, asking who ran these sessions, who was in charge of this secret ward, the old man's voice dropped to a terrified whisper. He only said, "Not everyone in that building worked for the hospital." He refused to elaborate further, and the interrogation ended. The implication was horrifying. Something or someone outside the bounds of medical science had been operating within the asylum's walls. The Hartwell Asylum was officially condemned and demolished in 1992. No one was ever charged in connection with the secret ward or the disappearance of Clara Hayes. Her case remains officially unsolved, another ghost in the state's archives. But the story doesn't end there. To this day, local urban explorers and ghost hunters who dare to visit the ruins report strange occurrences. They speak of a sudden drop in temperature, the faint sound of crying echoing from beneath the rubble, and the fleeting apparition of a woman in a tattered patient gown, wandering the desolate grounds. They say she's still looking for a way out, forever asking for the name of the nurse who forgot her, the doctor who signed her release, and the institution that promised her freedom, only to swallow her whole. Thank you for joining us on this unsettling journey into the shadows of the past. If you find these forgotten stories as compelling as we do, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the unknown. Stay curious and stay safe.